From a young age, Tyler always felt different. While the other boys played soccer and roughhoused at recess, Tyler found solace in twirling scarves and imagining himself as a glamorous star on a grand stage. But in his small town, such dreams were often met with confusion, sometimes even cruelty. He spent much of his childhood pretending to fit in, hiding the parts of himself that he thought would never be accepted. As he got older, Tyler's fascination with fashion, makeup, and performance only grew. He would sneak into his mom's closet, trying on her high heels and draping himself in her old dresses when no one was home. He practiced dance moves in front of the mirror, lip-syncing to his favorite pop divas, but always with the door locked, afraid of what might happen if anyone saw the real him. One evening, during his senior year of high school, Tyler sat at the dinner table with his family, wearing his usual normal clothes, when his younger brother, Josh, blurted out, "Tyler, what's that thing between your legs?" His heart stopped. Tyler frowned, thinking that somehow his secret had been revealed. His mind raced. Had Josh seen him wearing heels? Had someone found the stash of makeup he hid under his bed? But Josh was pointing at his legs under the table, where Tyler's napkin had slipped, bunching up awkwardly around his lap. The entire family burst into laughter at the innocent misunderstanding. But that moment stuck with Tyler. "What is that thing between your legs?" he thought later that night, staring at himself in the mirror. He wasn't referring to the napkin or his anatomy. He was thinking about the weight of all the things he had hidden, all the parts of himself he had kept locked away out of fear of rejection. By the time he graduated, Tyler had learned to compartmentalize. He lived his life like he thought he was supposed to, getting good grades, going to college, and keeping up appearances. But inside, he felt hollow, trapped between who he was and who the world expected him to be. Then came the night that changed everything. It was during Tyler's sophomore year of college that he found himself wandering into a local bar on a whim. As he nursed a drink, the lights dimmed, and the stage lit up. One by one, performers stepped into the spotlight, each more glamorous and fearless than the last drag queens, larger than life, owning every inch of the stage. They twirled, strutted, and lip-synced with absolute confidence, basking in the adoration of the crowd. Tyler's heart raced as he watched. For the first time, he saw a reflection of the person he had always been too afraid to show the world. These queens were powerful, beautiful, unapologetically themselves, and it dawned on him that there was nothing to be ashamed of in who he was. The next day, Tyler made a decision. He wasn't going to hide anymore. He needed to embrace every part of himself, and that meant stepping into the light. Tyler dove headfirst into the world of drag. He began practicing makeup tutorials online, learning how to contour, create dramatic eye looks, and sculpt his face into something fierce and fabulous. He invested in wigs, learning to style them and make them his own, and he started crafting his own outfits, sometimes out of thrift store finds, sometimes out of scraps, but always with creativity and a dash of sparkle. At first, it was hard. His hands trembled as he applied foundation, and his first pair of heels left his feet blistered and aching. But the more he practiced, the more confident he became. Tyler transformed into Tyra Fierce, his drag persona, bold, sassy, unapologetically fabulous queen who was ready to take on the world. His debut at a local drag night was a whirlwind of nerves and excitement. As he stepped onto the stage, his legs shaking slightly in his heels, he could hear the murmurs from the crowd. But the moment the music started, something clicked inside him. Tyra Fierce came alive. Tyra strutted across the stage with confidence, lip-syncing perfectly to a pop anthem, her eyes glinting under the stage lights. By the time her number was over, the audience erupted in applause. Tyler had never felt more alive. For the first time, he wasn't hiding, was shining. Word about Tyra Fierce spread quickly, and before long, Tyler was being invited to perform at bigger venues, earning a following both online and in the drag community. His confidence grew with each performance, but more than that, Tyler started to feel a deep sense of self-acceptance. The thing between his legs, he realized, was no longer a burden or a source of shame. It was simply a part of him, one small piece of the complex, beautiful, fierce person he was becoming. But Tyler's journey wasn't without its struggles. He faced backlash from old friends, and some family members struggled to understand his transformation. At times, it was lonely, and he had to remind himself why he had started this journey in the first place. It was during one of those tough moments, backstage before a show, that his brother Josh showed up unexpectedly. Tyler hadn't seen him in months and wasn't sure how his younger brother felt about his new life. But Josh stood there, staring at Tyra fierce in all her glory, and then smiled. "Tyler, or Tyra, whatever you want to be called," Josh said, a bit nervously, "I just want you to know I'm proud of you. You've always been my big brother, and now you're the fiercest queen I know." Tears welled up in Tyler's eyes, and the two brothers hugged, tighter than ever before. In that moment, Tyler realized that acceptance wasn't just about how others saw him, it was about how he saw himself. Tyra Fierce continued to rise, performing in bigger clubs, entering national drag competitions, and gaining recognition for her unique style and powerful performances. But no matter how much success came her way, Tyler never forgot the journey it took to get there: the fear, the courage, the self-doubt, and ultimately, the acceptance. Today, Tyra Fierce isn't just a drag queen, she's an inspiration, a symbol of what it means to embrace who you truly are, to break free from the boxes society tries to put you in, and to shine in your own, unapologetic light. And every time she steps onto the stage, heels clicking, wig flowing, and makeup flawless, Tyra knows one thing for sure: what's between her legs doesn't define her. What defines her is her heart, her strength, and her unshakable sense of self. Because she's from the House of Fierce, and she'll never let anyone dim her sparkle again. As Tyra Fierce's star continued to rise, she found herself thrust into the spotlight in ways she had never imagined. With every show, her confidence grew, but so did her platform. She wasn't just performing for applause anymore, she was performing for every person out there who, like Tyler once had, felt trapped in the shadows of who they were meant to be. The drag community embraced Tyra, and she embraced them right back. What started as a series of small performances in underground clubs had evolved into headlining gigs at the city's most prestigious venues. Soon, Tyra was booked for drag festivals across the country, where she connected with other queens who had stories like her own, queens who had fought against rejection and ridicule to stand in their truth. But with the newfound success came new challenges. Tyra's online presence was growing rapidly. Her videos, where she showcased not only her performances, but also her makeup tutorials and candid thoughts about identity and self-love, went viral. Fans from all over the world began reaching out, sharing their stories of struggle and transformation. Tyra had become more than a performer, had become a role model, and with that role came responsibility. The more Tyra opened up about her journey, the more she realized how many people were still suffering in silence, afraid to show the world who they truly were. Messages flooded in daily from teenagers battling bullying, adults afraid to come out to their families, and even seasoned performers who were struggling with self-doubt. In one particularly heartfelt message, a young fan from a small town wrote, "Tyra, how do you do it? How do you stay strong when people don't accept you for who you are? I feel like I'll never be enough." Tyra Saturday with that message for a long time. She remembered what it felt like to hide, to doubt, to wonder if she would ever be enough. But she also remembered the power that came from embracing her truth. She knew she had to respond with more than just words, she had to do something. That's when the idea for Fierce Freedom was born. Tyra Fierce launched a campaign to support luckless youth and adults struggling with identity, acceptance, and self-expression. It started small, a series of online workshops where Tyra and other drag queens spoke openly about their journeys, offering advice and encouragement to those in need. But the campaign quickly grew, fueled by the overwhelming response from the community. Donations poured in, allowing Tyra to expand her reach, hosting events in cities where queer representation was scarce. The workshops weren't just about drag, they were about finding your voice, standing in your truth, and knowing that you had the power to shape your own future. Tyra Fierce became a beacon of hope for those who had been told they didn't fit in. She spoke at schools, youth centers, and luckless organizations, sharing her message of self-acceptance and resilience. One night, after a particularly moving performance at a charity gala for Fierce Freedom, Tyra found herself backstage, catching her breath. The event had been a huge success, raising more than she had ever hoped for. Yet despite the joy, there was a quiet moment of reflection. As Tyra peeled off her wig and wiped away her makeup, Tyler stared at himself in the mirrored face beneath the glittering glamour. It was a face that had come so far, one that had once been filled with doubt and fear, but now shone with pride and strength. Just then, there was a knock on the dressing room door. It was Josh, who had attended every one of her major performances since that fateful day when he had shown up backstage, declaring his support. Now, he stood at the door, holding a gift in his hands. "I got you something," Josh said, smiling sheepishly. "Open it." Tyra opened the small box and found inside a delicate necklace with a charm in the shape of a small star. "It's for you," Josh explained, "to remind you that you've always been a star, even before all of this, even when you were just my big brother, sneaking around in mom's heels. You've always been shining, Ty. I just didn't see it back then." Tyra felt tears well up as she clasped the necklace around her neck. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of how far she had come, how far they had come as a family. Her brother had been one of the first to embrace her for who she truly was, and now, years later, he was still her biggest fan. "I love you, Josh," Tyra said, her voice cracking. "Thank you for always being there." "You don't have to thank me," Josh replied. "You've done the hard part. You showed me, and everyone else, what it means to be brave." Tyra looked back at herself in the mirror, her heart swelling with emotion. She has spent so many years thinking that the person she saw without the makeup wasn't enough. But now, she knew that both sides of her, Tyler and Tyra, are equally beautiful, equally strong. As she stood there, surrounded by the lights of the dressing room, she realized that her journey wasn't just about being a drag queen. It wasn't just about wigs and makeup and performances. It was about finding the courage to be herself, whether that meant strutting across a stage in stilettos or simply being the person she was always meant to be, unapologetically. The world had once asked her, "What's that thing between your legs?" But now Tyra Fierce had a different answer to give. It didn't matter what was between her legs. What mattered was what was in her heart, and that heart was fierce, unstoppable, and filled with love, not just for herself, but for every person out there fighting to find their own truth. With her brother by her side, her community behind her, and her head held high, Tyra Fierce walked out of that dressing room knowing that her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she was ready for whatever came next. Because Tyra Fierce was more than a drag queen. She was a force of nature, and nothing could stop her now. Tyra Fierce stepped out into the cool night air, feeling a sense of calm and clarity she hadn't experienced before. The roar of the crowd had faded, but the energy from the night still buzzed through her veins. She had spent years fighting to be seen, to be heard, and now, here she was, a symbol of hope for so many others still searching for their own voice. As she walked alongside Josh, her heels clicking against the pavement, the two siblings shared a quiet moment. No words were needed. They both knew how far they had come together, how much they had learned, and how their bond had strengthened through it all. Tyra glanced up at the night sky, the stars shining bright, and thought about the necklace Josh had given her. The small star that now rested against her chest was more than just a reminder of her journey. It was a reminder that she had the power to create light wherever she went. She wasn't just a performer or a drag queen anymore. She was a guiding star for others, showing them that it was okay to be different, okay to be unapologetically yourself. As they reached the car, Josh turned to her with a grin. "You know, Ty, I always knew you were fierce, but tonight, I think you outdid yourself." Tyra laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh that came from the depths of her soul. "Well, darling, when you're from the house of fierce, you've got to live up to the name." The two of them got into the car, but before Josh started the engine, Tyra spoke softly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for always believing in me. I didn't realize how much I needed that." Josh smiled, his eyes reflecting the same pride and love that Tyra had come to cherish. "You never needed me to believe in you, Ty. You've always had it in you. I just had to catch up." As they drove through the city, Tyra gazed out the window at the streets of her hometown. She thought about the people she had met, the lives she had touched, and the countless messages she had received from fans who saw themselves in her story. She had once been a kid hiding behind closed doors, afraid of the world's judgment. But now, she was a woman who had embraced her power, her identity, and her truth. The world had questioned her. They had asked, What's that thing between your legs? With ignorance and cruelty. But Tyra Fierce had transcended those questions, those doubts, and that hate. She knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that her worth wasn't defined by anyone else's perceptions or expectations. It was defined by the love she had for herself and the community that stood with her. As the car pulled up to her apartment, Tyra paused before getting out. She looked at Josh, her brother who had become her greatest ally, and smiled. The world may have questions, but I have the answer. We're all fierce in our own way. We just have to let it shine. Josh nodded, his grin wide. Damn right. Tyra stepped out, waving goodbye as Josh drove off into the night. She stood at the entrance of her building, looking up at the stars one last time. The weight she had carried for so long was gone. The fear of being seen, of being judged, had vanished. In its place was an unwavering confidence, a joy she had never known before. She wasn't just a drag queen, a performer, or even a symbol. Tyra Fierce was someone who had found the courage to be herself, to own her story, and to share it with the world. As she walked inside, she knew that her journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. There were more stages to conquer, more hearts to touch, and more stars to reach for. But wherever she went, Tyra Fierce would carry with her the unshakable truth she had learned along the way. What matters isn't what's between your legs. What matters is what's in your heart, the love you have for yourself, and the light you bring into the world. And Tyra Fierce, she was destined to shine.